Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. I'm Scott. I'm one of the trainers for EduSpot Community Brands. Some of you may have spoken to me before, and some of you may have even seen some of our previous webinars as well. So today's webinar is going to be focused on the forms module within Teachers to Parents. And some of the things that we're going to cover today are sort of common support queries that we get for this module. We're also going to take a look at our new COVID forms, which you can use for getting test results from students and staff alike, and generally just take a little sort of tour of the system in that way. I've got a colleague on hand from our support team, so if you have any questions during the webinar, feel free to use that function of the software to pose those questions, and my colleague can answer those. If we can't answer those directly in this webinar, then don't worry, we will contact you afterwards. Just leave your details and we will be in touch. Okay, so straight into business. So when you sign into the forms module, you'll be on here, and the first thing we're going to take a look at today is the new COVID test forms that you can use for the system. So in this demonstration account we've got here at the very top, you will see that we've got some lateral flow test result forms in here. Now on the right hand side, you'll see this symbol just here. So when you see this symbol, which is the little clock next to it, this means that you've got a form that is on a repeat schedule. So this means the form is going to be sent several times over a sort of long time period for parents to fill in responses on. So when we click on this icon, it's going to bring up previous ones that were sent out, so each instance of a form that was sent out, so for example on the 22nd and 23rd of this month, and it will also show you the next one that is due to go out. So we've got this scheduled one here for tomorrow. What we can also do is we can look at the results from the previous weeks. So if we click onto the results for the first week that this one was sent out, and as you can see, we've got the results for the test results in here. So as you can see, we've got the child who's replied for them, the test result itself, the date, time, test ID. You can also, when you are setting these up, get a prompt for the parents to upload a photo of the test itself as well. One thing you might notice is that we've got a response for a child in here twice. So for Elliot here, we've got a void test result, but then we've got another one which comes up with a positive result. So you do have the ability with these forms, you can set it up so the parents are able to submit multiple responses, so that if they do submit a void test, they can do another one and then submit the updated test result. To do that, all that you are doing is you are editing the response for the child. We're using this icon just here. And then what you do is in this form, you scroll down and you'll see this little green icon for submit another response. And then you can refill in the form, submitting an extra response. So that's how the results will look. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go back and we'll take a look at how you can schedule these forms out and when you can schedule them to go out. So we're going to use this one that's scheduled for tomorrow. So we're going to go to edit here. And you might recognize this page using the forms module. This is where you normally send out a form, who you choose who you're sending to. The extra feature in here now though is that we have a scheduled form to be sent repeatedly. So you'll see here where it says send later and it's telling you when it's going to go. And then if we click on change, you'll get this little pop-up here. So in this pop-up, you can choose what time of day you want it to go out, so 7 in the morning, and what days of the week you want the form to be sent out as well. So depending on when you want your test results in from the parents for the children, you can get the form to be sent out at a particular time or multiple times per week. So as you can see with this one, it's going out at 7 in the morning on Mondays, Tuesdays and Thursdays every week until this date just here, so until the 19th of May this year. Okay. So to create these forms, we've got some templates that you can use. So from the home page of the forms module, you can click on create new form and you'll see them in the new and featured templates section. So there's 3 different types that you can use. So we'll go from right to left. So you've got this one here for sending to staff members so that staff can submit test results for the lateral flows. You've got this one, the middle one, for sending to parents regarding the student. So this is the one that you'll use to send out to the parents themselves for them to submit the responses. And then you've got the internal one, which is a form that you can set up so that staff members within the school can submit responses for students. Okay, so depending on which ones you are wanting to use, but all you would do is you would click on go next to one of those forms. You can pop a name for the form in here as well, and then you've got these little prompts here, so including the option to upload a photo of the test result. You can also put a prompt in there for the time the test was taken and a prompt for the test ID, and then all you would do is just create the form and then send it out as you would normally send a form out. So that covers the new features of the system. So they're quite handy to be able to use the system to collate those test results. So the next thing we're going to be moving on to is just a couple of common queries that we tend to get with the forms module. Now, the first one that we tend to get is for forms that you're sending out, and there might be some forms that the responses you want to limit how many responses you can have for certain questions. And an ideal example of this is for club sign-ups and that sort of thing. So we've got a form in here for football club sign-up. So this is a perfect example to show you. So what you can do is we're going to go to edit this form. Now this form is quite a simple one. It just explains that you've got a club and it will simply ask the parent if they would like a place in that club, yes or no. Okay. Now with this question, would you like a place in the club? When you edit this component, you'll see that your options here are yes and no. And if you are wanting to limit the amount of yes responses that you do get from parents within this form, all that you have to do is just tick this box to say that it's a positive response. Once you've done that, you can then, when you go to the sending page, you've got settings and form settings. In the form settings, you can then set how many responses you want to limit it to. So this will limit the amount of positive responses that you accept. So this one is taking 11 spaces. You can then also put some text in to be displayed when those responses, when that limit has been reached. This text will then be displayed to the parents to explain that they can't submit a response. So for example, sorry, the club is full. Okay. So that's one of the common things that we do get asked about, limiting the responses to certain questions within the form, and that's basically how you can achieve that. Now, the most common thing that we get with our questions regarding the forms module is all regarding creating a form and how the components work as well, especially the rules that you can set up within the forms module. So what we're going to do now is take a look at a little bit more of a chunky form that we've created within the system, and I'm going to explain what each of the components can do, and then we're going to spend a little bit of time sort of talking about the rules on there. So we've got a menu summer term form here. So I'm going to go to edit this form. So looking at this form, as you can see, there's quite a lot of components in here, and there's also quite a lot of rules in this form as well. The idea of this form is this is just an example that you can send out to parents. It's just regarding menu choices for children for school dinners each week. So firstly, what we'll do is we'll go to the preview of it so I can show you. So we've got some text at the top of the form just here, and then we've got several questions. So the first question regarding the general pattern is whether the child is having a packed lunch every day or whether they're having a school meal every day or a mixture of school meals and packed lunches. Now, depending on which answer you pick here, if we just pick the packed lunch, you'll see that no changes to the form are made. But if we select this option for school meals every day, you'll see that a lot more questions come up for the parent to fill in. This is due to a rule. You can set up a component called a rule within a form, and the rule means that depending on how a response is submitted to one question, several other questions or components can then be either shown or hidden in the form depending on the response. We've got another example of it here. Does your child have any dietary allergies or intolerances? If they say no, no changes. If they say yes, a follow-up question appears just below asking them to state any dietary allergies or intolerances that they've got. What we've also got here is they've got the week 1 Monday main course choice. So when we go into the drop down for this one, you'll see that there's 5 options to choose from. Then they've also got a choice for the week 1 Monday, the dessert option. Okay. Now, what you might want to do is you might want them to be able to choose a dessert option with these first 3 choices. But for these last 2, they don't require a dessert option. So what you can do is you can set up a rule so that if one of those 2 options is chosen, as you can see, it now hides the week 1 Monday dessert option so that they don't fill it in. So this is how the form would look when it's facing the parent there. So what we'll do now is we're going to come out of that preview and we'll have a look at this form in terms of the components that it's made up from. So the first component, this one, is just a simple text box. So if we edit this, you'll see what it looks like. So this is just where you can use just a simple tool to add in text to a form, which just gets displayed to the parents. There's nothing else to this component, really. One thing that you will see is we've got these tokens in here. So for due and, for example, student name as well. These are accessed in these little drop downs just here. And they are kind of like mail merges. So when the form goes out, depending on the child and the parent, the token will substitute the child's name in there, for example, for student name or their reg group. This due one is for the due date of the form. But there are various tokens available for you to use within forms. So by all means, have a little play around with those. Okay, so we'll take a look at the dietary question now. So the dietary question is a simple yes or no question. So when are you asking questions to the parents here, does your child have any dietary allergies or intolerances? Option 1 is yes, option 2 is no. And at the top of the component, you'll see that we have selected only one option can be selected at a time from these radio buttons. Then underneath this, we've got a component which is called a prompt for text. And this is the one that appears based on the choice of the first question, where it says, please state any dietary allergies or intolerances. And then the placeholder is like a hint. So you're just saying type here. Now, then underneath, we've got our first rule that we're going to look at. So these 2 questions, you don't want them both to display to the parents. So you only want the second question to display if they've selected that their child does have some dietary intolerances. So we can set up a rule here. So here's the question. Does your child have any dietary allergies or intolerances? If this question is set to the value of yes, then you can set the rule to then display this question. So it's either show this question or hide this question. Okay. And that's how a rule works. So you have your question, you set up the rule so that whatever answer it is that you want the parents to then see the follow-up, you can get the rule to display that follow-up pending their first response to the first question. Okay. Then if we look down at the week 1. So week 1, Monday, main. This component is just a simple drop-down list of options. So you've got all of the options in here. Now, when it comes to the rules, you do have to set in the rule, the value of which you want the response to be. And you'll see here that you can actually simplify the values with these little words before the bracket here. So these are for use in the rules. So we're going to take a look at these in a moment. So then we've got our rule here. So what we want this rule to say is if in the first question, the parent chooses either packed lunch or doesn't attend for lunch, if it chooses any of those 2 options, we want to hide the week 1 Monday dessert option. So that's when in the rule we put the question week 1 Monday main. If that value is in, and then the 2 options separated by a comma. And you'll see that the options here are listed as PL or XPS. And that is because of the shortcuts that we put in the first question, just here. So rather than typing out the whole thing within the rule, you can just use those shortcuts. Okay. So that kind of explains rules and how they work. So it all depends on the nature of the form that you are setting up, depending on what questions you want to be displayed, obviously pending the responses that you're accepting from the parents. Rules can be very, very handy though, because it just saves the form from becoming too clunky. When parents are reading the form, last thing they need to see is a load of questions that they don't necessarily need to answer. So it's just quite a handy way of condensing the form down and just displaying the parts of it that they need to see. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to go to the bottom of these components here. And at the bottom, you'll see where you can add a component to form. So when you're looking at these components, as you can see, there's quite a few of them. And when you hover over one, it will give you an idea as to what each one does. But just to explain, so the text description is just where you can add some general text into the form. So this is quite good at the start of a form where you're wanting to explain to the recipients of this form what it's all about. The section divider and the space, these are very much the same. The idea of these two is that they separate different sections of the form. So a section divider will put a solid horizontal line in the form to split one section from another, whereas the space option will just put some white space between sections. We've then got the input text option. So if you choose for the prompt for text, this is to prompt the recipients to enter a small piece of information. So an example of a prompt for a text would be, please type your name in this box, that sort of thing. Then we've got a prompt for multi-line text, and this then gives the recipient a bigger box to type in. So a prompt for multi-line text is going to be used primarily when you want the information to be put in there. If it's going to be quite a lot of information, maybe a small paragraph or a couple of sentences, then you would want to use the prompt for multi-line text because this gives them more room to type out their answer. The rest of these are fairly self-explanatory. Prompt for email will be a prompt for the recipient to put in an email address, prompt for a phone to prompt them to put in a phone number, and then a date and a time as well. So that covers the input text options. You've then got a drop-down list of options. So this is where you can set a drop down for a question. So this could either be a question to ask them permission for something, and you could do like a yes or no, or you can do as many responses as you want really. And that's just going to be in a simple drop down list. You've then got the option for multiple choice. So multiple choice will just add a series of radio buttons, and then they can select either a single option from that list, or they can select multiple options from that list depending on what it is that you are wanting to ask them. Tick box, this one's quite good for consent. So you'll see these on online forms all the time where you will see a little tick box to say, I have read and understood the terms and conditions, that sort of thing. So that's what the tick box is primarily used for. Then we've got a tick box list. And again, this is very similar to the multiple choice, but it's in the form of tick boxes instead of radio boxes. We've then got ratings. So you can add a rating to your form. So if you are wanting the recipients to rate, a feature or a particular experience, so maybe you had something go on like an event in school and you were wanting parents to rate how well they thought that event went, then you can use like a little rating system in here. And you can use stars for a rating, use smiley faces, or you can just use a simple 1 to 5 rating. The signature box is quite a good one. This will prompt the recipient to put a signature on the form. This is especially good for consent for things like trips and stuff like that. If the recipient is using a desktop computer, they can use their mouse to sign, or if they're on a mobile phone or a tablet, then with it being touchscreen, they can just use their finger to put their signature on there as well. Next one we've got is the photo or image. So this is a prompt for the recipient to upload a photo or an image into the form. So an example of this would be when we looked at the COVID test forms earlier on, and we were using a prompt for a photo for the parents to upload a photo of the test itself. And then the final component is the rule, which we've covered already. So that covers all of the components within the form. So it all depends on the form, the kind of form that you are wanting to send out and who you're wanting to send it to as to what components are going to be the most use for you. But the bonus of this system is that it's entirely customizable by yourselves. Once you are in the system, you can tailor this to suit whatever situation you are in. So that, everybody, is everything that we wanted to cover for today's support webinar for the forms module. I will pause for just a couple of moments. If anybody wants to ask any questions, then feel free to do so. We will answer some. We'll answer some right now if you have any. Okay, so it doesn't look like we've got any questions from anybody. So thanks everybody for the time that you've taken today to have a little look at our webinar and have a look around the form system with me. I appreciate that. If you do have any questions, do feel free to raise a support ticket with our team. You can contact them via our main website, or you can give us a call as well. Thanks very much for your time, everybody, and we look forward to seeing you on our next webinar.